Vladimir Tatarsky killed in St. Petersburg through an explosion at a cafe. The Wagner Group has given him kind of honorary membership, his family access to benefits. The Ukraine government is implicated. Even the Western media in the United States will say that some aspects of Ukraine's government is implicated. What do you make of this attack? There have been comparisons to what happened to Daria Dugina, the daughter of Alexander Dugin, earlier last year. What do you make of this? What's the significance of this? It seems like a pretty significant event, but it comes in the midst as the U.S. and Western media talk about the Wall Street Journal journalist who's right now detained in Russia. That's getting a lot of attention as this huge violation of free speech. But when I was looking at the Western media, there was a lot of, I would say, denigrating of Mr. Tatarsky. He's just a blogger, that some were arguing that this is fair game. I mean, what do you make of all of this, and what's the significance given? I mean, I think he was on the same list that you're on, right, Scott? The Meritovitz list. Anyway, I'll let you go off.
Well, I first of all, I would take violent umbrage at anybody who said he's just a blogger, therefore he should die. Tell you what, meet me in the back shed. We'll talk about what's going to happen to you. No, it doesn't work that way, guys. Free speech is free speech. Okay, if you're an American and you claim to be an American, you claim to appreciate the Constitution of the United States, free speech is free speech. Now, I know that Mr. Tatarsky, or Maxim Fomin is his real name, is not an American citizen. But how dare you? How dare anybody who is born in this country say that just because he's a blogger who posts things that you find you object to, that this is a death penalty? God forbid you ever get on the other side of that and somebody decides that what you're posting, what you say, indeed what you think, is violently objective, and they target you for death. That's not how it works. Whether you agree or disagree with what he posted, this was a war correspondent. This is a man who went out and collected information and packaged it and delivered it to an audience. And it wasn't an insignificant audience. He had over 500,000 subscribers to his Telegram channel, and he was widely quoted. I will tell you straight up that I didn't agree with everything he posted, that I was not a fan of his analysis. But I read it. I followed him because I think it's important that you educate yourself with a wide variety of opinions. And he had an opinion that was influential. He was targeted by the Ukrainian intelligence services. This is becoming more and more clear. This was a targeted assassination by an organization that maintains the Meritovitz hit list. He was targeted for saying things that the Ukrainian government found objectionable. Daria Dugina was assassinated by the Ukrainian special services. Now, she may have been the unintended consequence of their targeting of her father. We don't know exactly, but it appears that they were trying to kill him, but because she swapped out the automobile at the last second, she's the one that was killed, and not him. But that doesn't change the fact that the Ukrainian government targets journalists for death. I'll just say that one more time so it sinks in. Later on, we start talking about what the Russian government is alleged to be doing against an American journalist. The Ukrainian government targets journalists for death. They kill them. I'm on that list. That means that ostensibly I'm targeted for death. For what? For saying things that people find objectionable? Sorry, that's not a death penalty. And here's the worst part. The United States government funds this activity. The Ukrainian government has no ability to generate income right now. They're bankrupt. Their economy is trash. So they operate, based upon the donations made by the United States government. And the United States government funds the Ukrainian intelligence services. We also fund the office of the presidency, Volodymyr Zelensky. His office operates an organization called the Center for Countering Disinformation. It is an organization that was created by the State Department with funding from the State Department. Its meetings are organized by the State Department. In fact, in July 14th of last year, the State Department organized a meeting of the Center for Countering Disinformation where they published a blacklist. And on that blacklist were a number of Americans who were targeted as Russian propagandists. They were called information terrorists, with an emphasis on the terrorist, meaning that they should be treated as you would a terrorist. That's marked for death, by the way. And also war criminals. We should be arrested and all. Now, my name's on that list. Recently, I was elevated to the #1 spot on that list. I'm at the top. And that list is a feeder list to the Miratorits list. So if you're #1 on the Center for Countering Disinformation's list, you're high up on the Miratorits list. So I take this a little bit personally. That's why I get a little angry at people who say, no, that's okay, kill them. Really? Really? You think that's a good idea to kill journalists? You kill people that you don't agree with. That's insane. And the fact that the U.S. government funds this, thereby implicitly supporting this, means that the U.S. government's in the business of killing journalists who dissent, who disagree with the official narrative. Now we can compare and contrast that with the treatment of the Wall Street Journal, journalist who was arrested in Russia on charges of espionage. Now there's a difference, you see. When I write something and post it, you can disagree with it, but I'm not releasing classified information. I'm not spying. I'm not doing something that's harmful to the national security of any nation. This man was caught red-handed, allegedly receiving classified information. He was in a town, Ekaterinburg, where there are some sensitive military-industrial facilities that produce objects that are essential to the special military operation. And he was digging into production levels to find out if the Russians were in fact producing particular kinds of munitions to the quantities claimed. Now, you can say that that's a legitimate journalistic question, but you don't get to go and get classified documents. That's against the law. You violate the law. You are technically a spy. Now, he may have an excuse, and he'll be brought before a judge, and he'll make his case. But there's no comparison whatsoever between somebody who was caught receiving classified information and somebody who was killed simply because the blog that he ran was unpopular in Ukraine. And to try and make a comparison between the two is absurd. It's just purely absurd. If you're a journalist, don't go collecting classified information. It's illegal here, and it definitely is illegal in Russia. It's illegal in just about every nation there is. There's no journalistic pass. Hi, I work for the New York Times. Hi, I work for the Wall Street Journal. Therefore, I get to see classified information from people unauthorized to do it. Now, in the United States, we do give journalists a pass. We know, for instance, Edward Snowden released extraordinarily sensitive documents to the press, and the press published some of these. We know that Julian Assange did the same thing. Now, Assange, because he's not an American citizen, he's being prosecuted for executing what would ostensibly be First Amendment rights. But notice that no New York Times journalist, no Washington Post journalist, no Guardian journalist is being prosecuted for publishing the same information that Julian Assange published. This is an assault on free speech. That's what the United States does. That's what Great Britain does. We assault free speech. Julian Assange is in prison right now, the 1,000th day of his imprisonment in Belmarsh, a maximum security prison in London, where he is literally dying. I would advise everybody listening to go watch the documentary film Ithaca. It's a sobering movie based upon the support that Julian Assange is receiving from his family, from his father, John Shipton, his brother, Gabriel Shipton, and from his wife, Stella Assange. It's heartbreaking to see what's being done to him. But every American, every Brit should understand there but for the grace of God go you. And if Julian Assange is successfully prosecuted, that's the end of free speech in America. Because if you ever publish something that the U.S. government takes umbrage to, and can find a potential to say you have published classified information, that's how you're going to be treated. That's how we treat Julian Assange. The Russians aren't putting anybody, they're not torturing anybody to death. Julian Assange is being tortured to death by the British, and he will be tortured to death by the Americans when he comes here, if he comes here, if he is indeed extradited. There's no American journalist in Russian prison being tortured to death. There are people serving time for espionage. Uh, they've been found guilty in a court of law. We can sit here and say that's not true. That's a trumped up charge, whatever. We did the same thing to that poor Russian girl, the redhead who had the NRA fixation and all this stuff. We put her in jail.
Butina, right? Maria
Butina, Marina Butina. Put her in jail for being a unregistered foreign lobby. She didn't commit espionage, but we treated her like that. So please get off your high horse if you're an American. Okay, there is a double standard here. We arrest people, we torture. Ask her how she was treated. Ask her how she was treated. Ask her what the Bureau of Prisons does. And if you want to put a blind eye to what they do, I'll tell you, they do it. If they're accused of doing it, they do it. Corrections officers are scum personified. These are people who are out of control. There's no checks and balances. They murder prisoners every day in America. They abuse prisoners because they can, because nobody cares about them. They're locked away and forgotten. And Maria Butina was put into that system, and she was sexually assaulted by Bureau of Prison authorities. She was put in solitary confinement. They harassed her. They tortured her. For what? Because she failed to register, in her lobbying efforts on behalf of the National Rifle Association. Okay, so I really don't want to hear anything about this. I'm not saying that the Russians treat their prisoners any better than we do, but the fact is, we have a gentleman, Mr. Whalen, a former Marine, who was accused of gathering information in an unauthorized fashion. He's currently serving an espionage sentence. We have this new Wall Street Journal journalist who is probably going to be prosecuted. And if you're prosecuted in Russia for espionage, you're going to be found guilty of it. And he's going to do jail time. For what? For committing a crime, a real crime, not a faked up, trumped up crime. But now we come back to Maxim Fomin. He was murdered, assassinated by the Ukrainian government with the implicit approval of the United States government. So the United States government is in the business of assassinating journalists that they don't agree to. And that's just straight up truth. And, I take it personally because I may be traveling to Russia in the near future. And if that happens, is the U.S. government going to allow the Ukrainian government to target me? Now, the Russians will say, we'll protect you, we'll take care of you. But that's not the point. It shouldn't be about protection. Journalists should not have to have protection traveling and doing their job. The fact that they have to have protection means somebody's trying to kill them, which means somebody doesn't appreciate free speech. Now, we know the Ukrainian government is that kind of government, but the United States government is funding them, is supporting them, is silent as they target Americans. And that should be disturbing to everybody.
Indeed, you brought up so many great points. I mean, I remember reading recently, this is during the Ukraine conflict over the last year or so. Miss Butina, Marie Butina, wrote an incredible piece in Russia, well, formerly Russia Today, RT, on what she experienced in prison. And I think she penned an open letter to Angela Davis talking about what she witnessed, not just with what she went through, but also with a lot of the mainly Black female prisoners that experienced the conditions she did. And it changed her, almost like her entire worldview. So, not only this, though, what you were saying about the Wall Street Journal journalist, I'm not even going to say his name, because honestly, at this point, what this feels like is just utter hypocrisy, because Julian Assange was provided information, right? And you said, Scott, journalists are protected. If you are provided information, you're not collecting the information, you're not actively getting it. People are giving it to you, and you're releasing it to the public as part of journalistic duty. That's what Julian Assange did, and his team, and now he's being tortured in a witch hunt.